Welcome to Mindful Mondays, your weekly dose of mental fitness, conscious leadership, and great conversations and storytelling. And today's guest is someone whose work has shaped how we experience food, but not only that, how we think about creativity, reinvention, and building with intention. Jeni is an entrepreneur, best-selling author, and the founder of Jeni's Splendid ice creams and Floura, which I've tasted. I tasted the rooibos flavor, and as a South African, I loved it. And from building one of the most distinctive food brands in America to now creating a new venture rooted in well-being, sustainability, and nourishment, she has continued to show what it looks like to evolve with courage and imagination. Her leadership brings together artistry, pragmatism, intuition, innovation, and I'm really excited to explore the mindset behind that with her today. So welcome to Mindful Mondays, Jeni.
Hi, it's so good to be with you today.
Thank you so much for making time. So I just want to let my audience know, but I met you last year and we're at this panel and I just spoke to you for 15 minutes and I'm like, I really need to know more about her because you're so cool, but you're also so intentional about how you move, but also very vulnerable in how you lead. So I'm really, really excited to have you today on Mindful Mondays.
Well, thank you so much. It's it was so great. We had a great conversation and I'm so glad to be back together.
How are you today? How are you right now?
I am so well today. Actually, yesterday I had this crazy day. I was like in 4 states on planes. And then today I woke up in New York and it's bright and sunny and kind of crisp out too. It's one of those beautiful spring days that's still a little cool, but the sun is bright and shiny and everybody seems like they're in a great mood. So it's great. So far, so good today.
How do you do it? Every time I'm on your Instagram, you're always traveling, but you always seem excited to do what you do. What is the why behind you and everything that you create?
I am kind of all over right now. And I think that's part of being an entrepreneur now, being a founder. I feel like I'm on planes 3, 4, 5, 6 times a week sometimes. And certainly every single week I'm on a plane somewhere back and forth. But I think I'm driven by this inner sort of, I guess, a vision, and that just propels me so much. So I always know that this is like for this beautiful reason, this like thing that we're building, and I'm part of an ecosystem, a part of a mosaic of fellowship, just doing my part to sort of bring that to life. And it is really fun. It is an adventure. It's not every day is great, but I think in aggregate, it's just all so beautiful. So I'm definitely led by that energy of like, okay, get in there, do your best today, represent for the team, you know.
And what is the vision?
The vision for Floura is, we have this ridiculous vision actually, but it's what makes it wonderful. We want to change the lives of 100 million people. 100 million is kind of our number, and take 100 million pounds of produce, what would become waste, out of the waste stream. So we work with apple cores and watermelon rinds, which are very good for your microbiome. And there's lots of research that shows that they actually have more fiber in them than the rest of the plant. And so our goal is to take 100 million pounds of that out of the waste stream. But right now we're just throwing that away. So we can affect 100 million people while we also sort of macrobiome and microbiome.
And that's incredible because I think even with the story of Jeni's Splendid ice creams as well, and now Floura, which is an incredible product, where this is what we talk about when we speak about intentional leadership and also intentionality, which is something that has been a thread in every single business that you founded, and this one is no different. How do you create in the way that you do? Because not a lot of people would think about using waste and creating it into a product that looks great, tastes great, and something that you'd want to get, because we always look at things, especially when you create, like, how do you take something that most people wouldn't want or wouldn't even think about and turn it into something that we'd want to consume?
There's so many things that are coming into my brain right now as you say this, because there's this idea of intentionality. And I think some people think intentional is like very well planned. And I think in some ways that's true. But I also think that intentionality is sort of a feeling. It's like knowing you're going the right way. And I think I am a person, I think this is sort of an entrepreneur spirit at heart, that sort of creator spirit at heart, being generative, is kind of, you spend a lot of time in the input. You don't even know that you're doing it. But like, if you're not currently at work on something specific. And that feels, that feels very like frenetic. It feels like you know where you're going and you can't get it out fast enough. If you're not in that spirit and that place, then you're in the other side, which is the input side, where you're quiet and you're just listening and you're looking for patterns, and there are dots on the map that are coming together. And eventually, sometimes it takes years actually, they kind of form a constellation, and then you flip into the other mode and you get into doing. You see it very clearly. But when you're in that sort of input mode, which I was for a long time before Floura, after I stepped away from Jeni's, you're just learning. You're just out in the forest one day, sort of atomizing and feeling your body and in your spirit. And the next day you're reading science about the microbiome. And the next day you stumble upon something, from some academic website about watermelon rind. And the next day you're in, a produce company because you're working on a completely different project. And then all of a sudden the constellation appears in front of you. And it's because you've just been allowing yourself to listen to the world and to yourself. And in a way, that is all intentionality. It's not that you start with a plan that just happens in this genius moment. It's that you've allowed yourself these maybe it's even a very long moment, maybe months, maybe even years of listening. And so you can do this on many fronts. Like, there are many things that I'd be listening to right now, or that I have been over the last years. And a lot of those things are not relevant now for Floura, but the ones that came together and they sort of became this very specific vision. And then it's like you sort of step into this, every day we're going to do something toward this vision. And that is also very intentional. And sometimes it's wrong. And that is also intentional, because when you follow your knowing, part of that, and actually the biggest part of that, is making mistakes. You're following what you think is right, what feels right. And then when it suddenly feels wrong, you have to stop, reassess, learn from that, which sharpens your intuition for the next time, and then make another plan and go forward. To me, that's intentionality. I think sometimes when we hear people talk about what it is to be intentional, it kind of feels like they have the plan already and they know what to do. And in some ways, you know what to do, but it isn't always right. It's like you always know the way, you may not know how to get there. Something, So you have to trust. You have to trust your body. You have to trust your knowing, not necessarily your brain. And then put it into a plan, try it, reflect, see what went right, what went wrong, learn as a team from all of that, and move on together, And that ends up becoming that sort of what intentionality looks like in reverse is very different than what it feels like in the moment.
But it sounds like a gut feeling.
It's true. It is true. And I actually think that's really interesting, because fiber is always compared to protein.
Yeah.
And protein is a very different vibe, right? It's very much about optimizing. It's very much about performance. It's very much ultimately about control. How much can I dial this in, my musculature or whatever? How much can I dial in every moment of my day to be optimized? And there is a time for that. But fiber is actually about feeding your inner wilderness, honestly, because if we get the old fiber conversation was about gut motility. That's still relevant. It's still important, obviously. But the new fiber research, the new research on prebiotic fiber is that diverse fibers feed your microbiome, and those will give off short-chain fatty acids and other chemicals that actually impact how you feel in every level of being, mentally, physically, emotionally. It's all coming from that gut feeling. We always kind of know that there's this other feeling outside of your linear brain, and that's because your gut is also part of your brain and part of thinking and feeling and knowing. And so it very much is about flow. So versus the protein sort of optimization performance, fiber is actually about flow and about how you feel on the inside.
Yeah. And you speak about, some days, that feeling will lead you exactly where you need to go. But some days it might lead you to make a mistake, which is okay, because it's also part of the process and how you get to the place that you need to get to, because you know exactly where you need to get to, but the path is never really like linear. It's never straight. There's ebbs and flows. And I think most people go into business hoping that crisis will never find them. With everything, like in your business journey, you've been in business for decades now, and you are still so optimistic about it, and you're so realistic about the fact that, in everything there are ebbs and flows. So in 2020, you had to deal with one head on. Can you share more of that with us, and what it taught you about leadership and the power in owning your own story, but how you managed to take that or crisis and turn it into an opportunity as you have right now?
Yes, there's a lot to. I love your questions so much. They're so rich. There's a lot in that. We'll talk about crisis. That's so important. And also this idea that like as an entrepreneur, and I think entrepreneur is like a spirit. It's something you apply. I think we have in our culture reduced entrepreneurship to finance. And that is very different, and it's a mistake to think of it, but it's how we think right now. We're this together collectively, we're very reductionist, and it's not helpful, I think, honestly, and new ideas. So entrepreneurship to me is generative. It's a way of seeing the world. When I think about, I studied art history, and I remember one of my professors said, like, after humans get all of their basic needs met, safety and food and whatever, love, the next thing you do is you make art. You make something beautiful. And so in my mind, I thought, in my life, I've thought, well, the next thing must be trade, right? So I have made something beautiful out of these materials or this thing, or I've created something and you've created something that's beautiful and that's valuable to me, or helpful or useful. And let's trade that. Let's trade now. And let's see. I think this is almost innate in our system is how do we make something better and create value? And to do that, you have to have, like, failure is just so innate to that process. I like this word, the swerve, like swerving versus like a pivot, because your whole life as an entrepreneur is about swerving constantly and sometimes gliding straight. So you're going straight and then suddenly you're swerving and then you're going straight again. And it's never like just linear. So you just have to get good at recovery. You have to get good at that pretty quickly. So every single day, there are multiple, what I would think of as mini crises. Every week, there are some bigger ones. Every month, there's even a bigger one, roughly. Many times a year, you have pretty big, almost existential issues. And then once a decade or once every 2 decades, you have literally like the complete meltdown. And those can be also incredibly powerful because you shed all of the stuff that you've built that you thought was important, and now none of it's important. So there are actually 2 crises that I would allude to or I'd reference in my life. In 2015, we had a pint test positive for Listeria, which obviously nobody wants, and we had done everything we possibly could at Jeni's to avoid that. And we got the call, and we figured it out. And we did our recall, and we did everything right. We're literally textbook in how you handle that from a public safety perspective, but also from a public relations perspective, I think. From a business perspective, not quite as cut and dry. We lost everything. We were going into summer. We were coming out of a hard winter. We had nothing. We had a lot of production for summer ready to go. And suddenly we lost everything. We had to recover from that. And we did as a team very slowly. What we learned from that, so many things. One of them is that your values aren't your values until they're tested. And then when they're tested and you come out the other side having them intact, then you can really say that those are your values. So things like integrity, things like quality. How do you come out the other side when you have nothing? But the other thing is that we learned that crisis clarifies you in a way that nothing else can. It's actually the best thing to go through. I don't wish it, of course. None of us would wish it on anybody. But as a company, you want to do so many things. You want to please people. That's one of the reasons that you exist. And so after a couple decades in business, you're doing a lot, probably too much. And when you get into this kind of crisis where you literally lose everything and you have to, survive, you have to fight for your life, the rules are different. The rules are different when you get to that place, literally rock bottom. You can fight differently. What happens is that you shed everything that's not essential, and you get to this core of who are we really and what can we leave behind? And for us at Jeni's, we knew exactly what that was. It was that our ice cream has to stand for this very specific thing of quality, of flavor, of how it feels, or it's not Jeni's. And we have to behave in this very specific way. And so we rearranged everything to then do that, and we survived. It took years. And then, of course, what happens? COVID happens in 2020. And we had just come out of it. I would say 2019 was our first sort of really great year after the 2015 event. And then we go into COVID. So this is just an ongoing thing. You have to kind of get used to it, sadly, but also that's what you get good at. So COVID happened. But COVID, the crisis for us wasn't just COVID. I mean, of course, it was incredible. And what we had to do is we had to decide very early on, were we going to pack our ice cream in pints, or were we going to pack it in buckets to serve with scoops? Because if we did buckets, that meant we had to have people in our stores. And in March, we had no idea. April, we had no idea if people were going to come in our stores. We had no idea what the summer was going to look like, but we still had to survive that. We opted to pack them in pints because we thought, you know what, we're going to do a lot of sales on our website, and we're going to ship and we're going to deliver. And it ended up being correct. So we were one of the only ice cream companies with that many pints available to sell on the market. But these are the kinds of decisions you have to make kind of in the blind. At the time when we made the decision, the president was saying we're going to be open for business in June, and we weren't. And so it was a good decision. We had to sort of trust our instinct on that front. The other thing, and we can talk more about this too, is that in 2020, I had a personal crisis, which was that the company was doing great. I realized the company was doing great. And actually without me, might even be easier for them. I was also in a place where I had been an entrepreneur for so long, 25 years almost. And I had just broken myself. I had nothing left to give. I felt like a washcloth that had been wrung completely dry. Mm-hmm. There were people in my life who weren't necessarily bad people, of course, but they were kind of controlling me, kind of handling me. I felt really caged, and I had been trying to figure that out for a long time too. And I kind of came to this realization: I was never going to be able to change how they thought about me or how they were behaving toward me. And I had to break from them. That was hard because that caused then a divorce. That was, a complete rethinking of my whole life, which I have only sort of recently then just, really come out of. And it was also the greatest thing. But yeah, standing on that precipice, looking into those decisions, which you've been looking at for a long time, many years, is not an easy place to be. But when you, I think, finally sort of have that breaking point, the way.
You said a lot of amazing points from 2015 to 2020 and the personal change. And just starting backwards from 2015 is how do you find yourself in crisis and then still have conversations with yourself? Because I think you can only be in touch with your values, still be self-aware when you have those conversations with yourself. But the world is looking at you. You are under so much pressure because you've built something that people trust. And now it's about credibility. It's about reputation. And those are things that you can never get back. But you still then need to be in touch with your values. Because like you said, your values are only really your values until you find yourself in that moment. So how do you, in all these phases, 2015 was, the big crisis, and you'd been building with so much intention, and there was nothing that could have prepared you for that. 2020 had to be a moment where, even after that crisis, a lot of people would be too, I think your gut feeling or your intuition takes a little bit of a knock, where you're trying to make the decision of whether or not to sell them in buckets or in pints, but you ended up making the right decision despite all of that. And then comes the personal crisis where you still need to trust that this decision that I'm making is the right decision, even though it has been this way for so many years. In all of that, how do you still manage to have conversations with yourself in crisis when you have the world looking at you, when you have your team looking at you, and still find moments of stillness to say, this is who I am, this is what I stand for, and I'll stand for it despite everything that's going on.
In so many ways, the definition of crisis is that you are no longer in control. So you do not get to say what other people are going to say about you. You don't get to show that. Your reputation is, is gone for that moment, for that time. You don't have control anymore over what other people say. You don't have a voice, maybe even. And so you have to get very centered on your inner sort of, I think of like inner wilderness, you get centered there. It can feel, and it has felt, and every time I've been in these deep crises, like a void. And I had, it literally, like my visual of it was like blackness. I'm floating in outer space. And I have always had something to ground me or something to grab onto, an idea to pull us through. And in these big moments like this, these really earth-shattering moments, there is nothing to hold on to. And you are no longer in control of what other people might think of you. And, maybe you've never even thought about that before, but, that everything is lost. And you kind of have to wait for that thing to float by that you're going to grab onto. What you're trying to do is to create a new vision, a new future, because the past almost doesn't matter anymore. When you get into this breaking point crisis, you can't rely on your foundations, the things that always kept you grounded, including how you've behaved in the past and your past, your whole story. And you have to create a new one. And it's a really hard place to be. And sometimes, the only way to do that is to find stillness, to rely, yes, on your values, the things that you know, and to just be still. I think eventually some kind of light will flutter by and it will seem inconsequential or meaningless, but you will hold on to it like it's like a lifeline, and it will take you somewhere to that next little step. And then from there's another little step. And from there's another little step. It is a disorienting place to be, but at the same time, in a weird way, it's incredibly freeing because there aren't the same rules or the same the sort of ways that everybody has always seen you. You can behave a little differently. You can go a different direction. And then the last thing I would say about that is that once you start to get that momentum, and it's just tiny at first and it starts to build, to get out of that, it's time. Time is what will shift things back in your direction. You cannot force it. You cannot force somebody to think differently about you or what you're doing. At Jeni's, this Listeria thing, it was like people had ideas about what we were doing on the inside. They had no vision to it, but they were speaking about it. And we had no voice to tell them anything different. And you just keep going, and your actions over time will then show people again who you are and who you've always been. But you just have to let yourself walk through that very slowly. It is a walk through fire.
It's a tough one.
Yeah. It's also really cool. It is really cool. And honestly, I don't even I wouldn't, I don't want to be friends with people who haven't been through some version of that now. I don't want to date anybody who hasn't been through that. I look for that, and I can see it in people's eyes when they know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a richness, a fullness, an appreciation for life that you can't have any other way, I don't think.
And it gives you space to be. But another thing that you spoke about was like the shedding that comes with it. Even in your personal life, I think especially as women, we feel this pressure to keep things together even when they're not working, because, it's like you're the person that holds everything and everyone together, even when you yourself are not held together. And to have the courage to say that, okay, like when you said like people controlling, I'm looking at you and I can't imagine anyone controlling like a spirit such as yours.
Well, that's the problem.
Yeah, because when you said that, I was like, look at you, I'm like, anyone trying to control you, that just feels impossible to me.
The way that you do it is by it doesn't feel good when, it's like a parent, there's that teacher or a parent relationship that a parent will have with a child. They control the information and the kid knows. It doesn't feel good when somebody is doing that to you, especially as an adult, and it's somebody on your level who's controlling or hoarding information that you can feel. And that is really, and they do that because you are an uncontrollable spirit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? People get afraid of that, especially in the business world, because business is so linear and the people around you are so linear.
But how do you get to a place where when you make that decision, the same people who control the information will then control the narrative about why you broke
well,
away?
There you go.
Yeah.
You have to walk away. You have to let them control the narrative. And there's the let them theory, but honestly, let them control that narrative. Let them feel like they've got, whatever. And they've got that power, and just walk. And just keep going. And that's exactly where I was in 2020, 2021. And, and now I think, I'm in such a place that is so wonderful that I don't care at all. It was hard because I'm like, you want somebody to think of you in a certain way. You want to change how they feel. And when you stop caring about that and then walk away, it's hard because you have to then create something new and a whole new way of being. But once you do, who's really great about this is actually Brene Brown.
Yeah.
She has something called in her book, Rising Strong, which I was using at this time, using this technique or this way of thinking about this. She calls it, it's Rising Strong. So you have a crisis. And she says it's the reckoning, the rumble, and the revolution. The reckoning is when you decide. So I am not happy. I'm going to make a change. I'm going to ask for a divorce. I'm going to step away from my company. I'm going to do whatever. And that takes years to get to that place. But you make the decision. Something happens. You have this breaking point that you can no longer go forward. It's actually a relatively easy thing. Yes, it takes years to get there, and that's never easy, but it's a relatively easy place to get to. I have decided it is done. Something is going to happen. The hardest part then is the rumble. So this is this minefield you have to cross because then everybody's like, don't do it. It's so great. Oh, I always thought you guys were so perfect together. Like everyone in your life is like, you sure you want to do this? Like, what about your children? Like there's this whole, everybody comes out and you have to stand not just as one oak tree, but literally an entire forest of oak trees in a storm and let them swirl around you and handle it the way they're going to handle it. And get through that. But that's the part, and she says this very clearly, that's the part where everybody turns around. Oh, I don't actually really want to do this. I don't want to protect myself and my happiness. I'm just going to protect other people. As women, we do this all the time. But if you can handle it, if you can imagine that oak forest grounded in the earth with the storm all around you, that the storm will pass and you will get to the other side. Then you get to the place of the revolution. And then everybody who was in that storm, creating the storm, is like, you were right. Or, oh, I always knew, now they see all this stuff or whatever. And it literally feels like a revolution. It literally, you now have this whole new life. This happens to women a lot too, and men too, in their sort of midlife, where you just kind of think like, oh, I wasn't protecting myself when I was young. And I maybe wasn't thinking the same way that I am now. And I need something different. And, you keep moving, you get through that. You start this process. But it was a great framework for me was her framework.
And it's a messy middle that people do not understand.
Yeah.
And you almost need to be headstrong about it, even when you look insane to everyone else.
It's headstrong. You just have to it's almost like you're just shut down. You just have to go into your stillness. I was going to the forest a lot, but it's just let them swirl around you, tell you you're an idiot, whatever they have to say. They have to deal with it too, because their lives are changing as well. The only reason they care is because they're a part of your life, and they will be in the end too. And so, you have to just kind of you kind of have to just be don't argue with them. There's no point in that. Don't make excuses. There's no point in that. Just keep moving. Actually, there's a poet in Columbus, Maggie Smith, and she has a whole book, Just Keep Moving. It's beautiful. It's true.
And in all of that, 2020, 2021 happens. Not only do you create a new product, do you say that you Is it a return to self or a new version of you?
That's it's both. It's really both, and it's such a beautiful question. I'm 52, so I feel like there's this moment that you get to where you have to say, like, I went the wrong direction for a while. Like, I think I knew who I was when I was in my teens, my 20s, my 30s, even when I was a child. Maybe especially, of course, when I was a child. And I remember some people disconnect with their child. I remember her really well. She's in me now, and then, you start pleasing a lot of people. Start pulling yourself in too many directions. You start becoming sort of very thin in all these different directions. For me, it was, I wanted to prove that, I understood business, and I could sort of be in that world, and I could speak that language, which I still can't. So it's kind of silly. And I wanted to sort of push myself to be like that. And what happens in a company is that you bring on a leadership. And I'm no longer the CEO or the leader. And I really never thought of myself as a CEO, Jeni, but more of a spiritual leader or visionary. But at the time, we weren't talking about visionary leaders. We were talking about, it was like CEOs. So bring in a CEO. Well, that person rightfully hires everybody in the company. And they pay everybody. They sign the paychecks. So the entire company becomes in their model. And it's not wrong. Whereas the company before had been maybe in your model, where people are more flowing and, you have conversations and it's just a different thing. Well, now that every room that you show up in, you are disrupting because everybody was super linear or whatever, because they're sort of in the model of the CEO or whatever. So now I've learned that when you bring on somebody to be a partner, the first and most important thing you can be is aligned. The word alignment, actually, the person who I heard that from first that I love very much is Young Pueblo. He's another poet. I love him so much. And he really helped me a lot. Alignment is key. It's everything. So you can be very different thinkers, but if you're aligned, you don't have, it's like you can speak almost in shorthand. When you have like a good friend and you're just like flowing, but then when you go and like talk to, I don't know, parents are like this a lot, and they just don't understand where you're coming from. And you have to explain so much just to get to any place of recognition. Alignment is really, for me, everything, because from there you can walk together. And when you don't have that, it's really like disorienting also. And so if you're like the outcast in your own world, and the way that you think is is no longer valid in this world, it can be incredibly disorienting.
And in all of that, how do you truly know when you're aligned? Because I find that, especially in business, I've had experiences where I meet people, it feels aligned until you realize that it's not. Because I think business sometimes feels like it's like dating. You need to go on a few dates first until you know that this is the person, because there's versions of ourselves that we present when we meet people and that we show. But then there's also that intuition, again, that we always go back to, where you know that in the friendships that you're building, in the people that you partner with, and the investors that you also bring on, and the boards that you build, not only your business boards, but the boards of your life, the board members of your life, the people that keep you accountable. How do you know? What is that moment where you know that you're truly aligned with people? What is that value that you look for? Because I think it's in something that they value. Because I think to know a person, even in business, you follow where they invest their time, where they invest their money, you follow the money. But in all these relationships, because you're a spiritual leader, spiritual mentor, and you're not the traditional business person, what do you look for to know that you're truly aligned with a person?
I think we underestimate or undervalue emotion in business. We look for markers or saying the right thing, and we think that we can go in and speak the right thing, and then that's it. And I think for some people, actually, that is good. But I think alignment is actually a feeling. It's an emotion. You know you're aligned because you're not having to explain yourself constantly. You know you're aligned because you don't feel strange in the room or in the conversation. You don't feel like fear. You don't feel fear for just saying something that you believe. You don't feel self-doubt in that specific relationship. And I want to say that, like, everyone will have a different kind of alignment. We're all so different. So my, Like the team at Jeni's is so incredible. They're so wonderful. And they are doing such a great job. Even if I'm not aligned with them anymore, it's probably where they need to be at this moment in the trajectory of the business. And that's great. You can have different teams. The importance is that the team is aligned under a leader that they're aligned with, And so there are many, many ways to do that. And to me, it's a feeling. If you don't have it, your company cannot work. I think it's going to be like constant friction, constant setbacks, lots of silos, lots of information hoarding, lots of politics, lots of vying for somebody's attention and et cetera. But if you have alignment and it starts at the top, I don't like to think, obviously hierarchies can be important in understanding and safety or whatever, but I kind of like to think more like in this like fellowship way, but it starts in the middle or in the, with the founders, and it radiates from there. So you want to build not just with skills, but with that feeling of like, does it feel good to be, can we just have a conversation? Can we have a conversation without, and be honest with each other without fear? And do we value the same things? So like, I value very much transparency and honesty, even when it hurts, especially then. And, not everybody does. A lot of people come in with masks on and they prefer it that way. And so really knowing who you are and what your expectations are in how you want to feel every day at work. And then you build the team with other people who want to feel that same thing. But of course, alignment shouldn't be mistaken with like the same skill set. Because if you're building a company, it's a fellowship, it's a mosaic. Everybody around the table should have completely different skills, often different perspectives altogether. And so alignment is this sort of nebulous sort of feeling that it's like, can you just have a conversation? And then with your amazing skills and knowledge that you bring to this group, together we make something bigger than the sum of our parts.
Mm-hmm. And with Floura now, looking back at your entire journey, what gave you the courage to be a second-time founder again and start this, I know you have the vision, but personally, again, what gave you that thing that, okay, I think I'm going to do this again, after stepping away from Jeni's, you're like, I think I'm going to do this again. What was that moment?
I could go so many ways with this. I want to say, I think right now, though, that like I struggle with the idea of free will. This is a huge thing. And I know it's like too much for this one conversation, but I really do struggle with the idea that like, that it was courage or that it sort of took this strength for me to do that. Yes, life takes a lot of strength and it's mostly just hard. But honestly, I think I think things open up and you know the way. Whether you're conscious of it or not, you do. For me, I was too curious. I was too curious about what it could become, about what was going on, about what happens when fiber comes into your body and how you change and shift from that and how important it is. And I was too curious about why aren't we talking about this? And I was too curious about this. It was just like peeling back the onion. There was no way I was not going to do it. There was no way I wasn't gonna be on that path. I was not gonna turn away. It just felt too right. And so I think this is true in our lives. And if we're really honest with ourselves, when we're going the wrong direction, we also know it. And sometimes there are many reasons why we won't have the courage now to get off of that wrong path, but eventually you will. So it's interesting. So I think about like, well, what else would I be doing? It would be harder probably than this or in its own way. And so sometimes I think it is still, even though like these are hard things, Jeni's was not an easy thing to build. Floura is not an easy thing to build. Putting yourself out there is really hard. It's monumentally hard. At the same time, I was not going to not do it. It was, the path just kind of opens up for you in a weird way. Not that it's easy. We still have to find resources. We still have to work really hard. I could be walking in the forest every day, and instead I'm building this amazing company. I'm in this other wilderness. But anyway, I don't know. It's a funny thing. Like the more you think about, am I really choosing this? The more you sort of think like, I don't know.
When you think back to, you say you're still very much connected to, the younger you, the you in her teens who knew exactly who she was. Do you think she's proud of you?
She definitely is me. And interesting, I have conversations with her all the time. When I was a teenager, I had an incredible therapist, and her name was Renda. And she was amazing. And she said, she taught me to talk to my younger self. So I started doing that. I started talking to the 7-year-old. There was a big break. I had actually a lot of things that happened when I was 7. I had major surgeries, and I actually think that I, died at one point, and I had this major thing. But I also had a lot of other trauma in my life when I was 7. So there's a 7-year-old me that needed some care. So I would talk to the 7-year-old me all the time. Well, then I would also, in my 15, 16, 17-year-old me, start talking to my future self and start envisioning what she was. And so it was like this conversation there. At some point, I started to hear these like messages back or something.
Yes.
I know it seems crazy, but I started to hear and feel this message back, which was like, it's going to be okay. Just keep going. It's going to be okay. Just keep going. And at one point I was like, just driving my car it was like a couple years ago. And I was just driving my car and just coming back from the forest, I think one day. And I was talking to my younger self, and I was saying that. I was saying, it's going to be okay. You're going to be okay. Like, it's going to be okay. I was talking to my teenage self. And suddenly I realized that maybe I am sending messages through time. Like, literally, maybe it always has been. I talk to my younger self, she talks to me, and we form each other. So like, maybe I don't believe in free will, but this, I don't know. You know what I mean? But I feel it. I hear it. And as I was in my car just driving as a 50-year-old or whatever, talking and saying, it's going to be okay, just keep going. And realizing for the first time that I had kind of thought that I had this guardian angel when I was young, who was maybe telling me these things. My grandmother always told me I had a guardian angel. It was her grandmother. And I kind of thought it was her telling me these things, like, it's going to be okay, and giving me that confidence. Now I think it was actually me. And I know that sounds crazy.
It doesn't.
But I know it to be true.
I read this book, Only Love is Real, by Dr. Brian Weiss. And it speaks about when he's a psychiatrist, and when he's trying to heal trauma, he always like hypnotizes you to go back to the younger you, to pinpoint the moment where something changed, right? So it's like messages from the masters or whatever. But then those conversations, it doesn't sound like you're speaking to someone in your past life. You're still speaking to yourself. But everything we believe to be true is inherently true, because you telling yourself in your car as a 50-year-old that it's okay, but you heard that it's okay when you were 7. I think that messaging is real. I don't think it's crazy at all, because the more I read that book, so I had bad back for so many years. And then reading that book, having conversations with my younger self, whatever traumas she was storing, and realizing that certain things are not real. It's just a protection mechanism that my younger self built. And then having to speak to my younger self and say, it's okay, you can let it go. I struggled with my back from like 19 to the age of like 27. My back is 80% better. MRIs couldn't find anything. CT scans couldn't find anything. X-rays couldn't find anything. So the reason why I laughed a little bit is because it's not crazy. I think it's just an inherent belief that there is a connection with your younger self, with all parts of yourself, because what your 7-year-old believed is like hugely influential on the person that you are now. And I actually encourage people to have a lot more conversations with themselves.
I think so too. And it brings me to this idea too, that we are in this, and I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. We're in this very control-centered optimization performance, reductionist. It's the Enlightenment, which did so many wonderful things, but also not great things. And I am very much a romantic. I want to be in my imagination. I think imagination is incredibly important for science and for other things. I think being able to go to the forest and literally sort of atomize. When I'm in the forest, I feel like the wind is going through me. I feel the irreducible feeling of love. Like, I sit in the forest and I can feel the forest, and it's love. It's the one sort of emotion that connects everything. And I think we undervalue, again, like this idea of like how much belief informs becoming, instead of like this, like, I'm going to plan it all out and optimize and do all, whatever, be the genius of the whole thing. To get back to the beginning of our conversation, instead, just believing you can, believing in something more powerful than you, believing in being in a force that's guiding you, love, the spirit, God, however you want to say it, nature inside and out. We are one and the same with that. And there is something we're missing right now. I think we're all feeling it. That gets back to that. So what happens when we combine the things that we know inside? Actually, the best scientists that I know, and I know some incredible scientists, are very religious. And it seems like it doesn't work together, but it does. Because you have to have this power of imagination and belief in order to create. So I think there's something missing right now that we're all kind of missing. It's going to be a little while before it really comes back. And how it comes back and manifests will be different than the past. It's going forward, it's not going back. But what that becomes is going to be really beautiful, I hope, and really interesting. And I hope we're around for it.
I think we will be.
And anyway, it lives inside of us. So we create it in our own way with our world and our businesses and our communities and our families, and impact the world over time, the rest of the world,
Jeni, this has been an amazing conversation. I feel like we could go on forever, but I'm worried about your time as well.
I love it.
But thank you for pouring into me in this conversation. There's always something so beautiful about vulnerability as well in leadership, and also affirming. I think a lot of people listening to this, especially women, there's a lot of times when we doubt our intuition, where we make decisions and the world looks at us like we're crazy, because we are moving away or veering away from what the norm should be or what the structures that have been set for us should be. But you spoke about like also having conversations with your younger self and knowing that there's something about your spirit and your values that you always need to honor. And I know in this next chapter with Floura and just in all the conversations I always have with you, that will always be something true about you, that you will always be Jeni. And you'll always have this beautiful spirit. But I also hope for our audiences as well that they've learned so many things as I have today. So thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you. I feel like I'm listening to so many women from my ancestors, from all of humanity. I think if we're quiet, we can hear their voices and we know their experience, even if history doesn't tell us what the truth about that. And it informs us so much. So I think listening to each other is really important as women too. Have you read Women That Run with Wolves? Yes. I haven't read the whole thing, but I have it. Yeah. And I know it. And one day I will actually read the whole thing. But no, I love the idea. And I've, you know how sometimes you swirl around a book for a long time before you actually do it? Yeah. That's kind of how I am with that book. I love it. Same. I stopped like in the first 50 pages, I think, for about 4 years. Yeah, that's me right now. Yeah. And like just the first part, it's like one of those books that you need to sit with because it literally speaks to your soul. Somehow I feel like I know it. Yeah. And I'll get back into it. But yes, I'm sitting with it right now because I know it. It's a knowing. Yeah. And that's also incredibly pure. When you finish it, you must let me know. Yes, I will. Thank you so much. And thank you to every single person watching at home. Please leave your comments, any questions. Jeni, you can find her on Instagram as well. But this conversation has just been, it's been everything. And I think I love founders who build with intention, and I love people who build with intention and are always connected to their why. And I think Jeni's no different. So check out some of her products. Floura is out. I've tasted it. There's a rooibos flavor for South Africans. It's actually really good. And I'm so grateful for this moment. And thank you to every single person watching. See you next week.